You are making the world a better place by listening to the Joy of Living podcast. This is your guide to achieving a more purposeful, powerful, and positive life. Join Barry Shore in unlocking the best version of you and becoming happier, healthier, and wealthier. And now, here's your ambassador of joy, Barry Shore.
Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Remember, you're good-looking, because you're always looking for and finding the good, and we found good in abundance with our amazing guest, Peter Nolan, who is our perennial favorite. Actually, thank God he comes on more than once a year. It comes on twice a year, and he's the most requested person that I've had on the podcast. We've been podcasting now. We have over 4 million downloads, and he's the winner. And the reason that you tuned in is because you know that on this show, we discuss the three fundamentals of life. And these three fundamentals of life enable you to be happier, healthier, and wealthier, because you're listening to The Joy of Living with your humble host, Barry Shore. And the three fundamentals of life are, number one, your life has purpose. And when you lead a purpose-driven life, number two happens. In this case, a good number two. You go mad. MAD stands for make a difference. And the third fundamental is to uncover the power and the secrets of everyday words and terms. Simple example. Right now, you are joined by 348,622 people around the world, and everybody's listening over this remarkable platform called the internet. Ask anybody, what does www stand for? Invariably, it has to do with the internet, of course. And factually speaking, they're correct. Now, in our world, the world of the positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant, www stands for what a wonderful world. And what is a word, right? WHATA, what a wonderful world. And on this show, you know that we discuss these processes that enable you to live your life to the full. Again, be happier, healthier, and wealthier. And whenever you hear, by the way, WWW, What a Wonderful World, that song from Louis Armstrong, Satchmo, which has gone around the world and not just touched tens of millions, 100 millions, but billions of people on the planet. What do you do right away? You can't help it. You smile. Now, smile is one of the most important words you could have internalized, utilized, and leverage in your life, because smile stands for seeing miracles in life every day. Seeing miracles in life every day. Now, I got to tell you, people, when I do my shows recently, thank God, no more COVID, no more masks, lots of energy, hugging. I had 1,176 people at an event recently. And we're talking about Barry Shore and smile. And I see people raising their hands. Hey, Barry Shore, I've been up for hours where I haven't seen any miracles. And I asked them, are you here? Can you hear? Can you stand still? I can't do that. Can you walk? I can barely do that. You have water to drink, you have food to eat, you have a place to sleep, you have family, you have friends. Every single one of those is a miracle. You know what the proof is? Simplest proof. 1 million people didn't get out of bed this morning. You know why? They died. By definition, if you're watching or listening, you didn't. You have an obligation now to live life to the full. And that means really understanding what it is that you can do to make a difference in the world. And that's part of the reasons why Peter Nolan joins us, because he's talking about money. And everybody likes to listen to money and what's going on and what's happening and what we can do about it for our benefit. And that's really a great thing. Now, I'll tell you a quick story about Barry Shore. Thank God we have hundreds of thousands of people listening, and always bringing family and friends. And God willing, will be over 500,000 people listening in the next few months. But the story of Barry Shore is very simple. I'm standing up in the morning, hale and hearty, infinitely tall buildings in a single bound. That evening, I'm in the hospital, totally, completely paralyzed from the neck down. It's called a quadriplegic. Not an automobile accident, not a spinal injury, a rare disease which I never heard of the day before, took over my body and rendered me completely paralyzed. I could only communicate by blinking my eyes. I was 144 days in the hospital. I was in a hospital bed in my own home for 2 years. I couldn't turn over by myself. 4 years in a wheelchair. I had braces on my legs, from my hips to my ankles. That was progress. Thank God today I'm vertical and ambulatory with the help of a 7-foot walking wand. So I'm a triped, not a biped. I still can't walk up a stair by myself. I can't walk up a curb by myself. And I have help 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. But you hear my voice, positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant. And it's all because of this one word, smile. Seeing miracles in life every day. I got to tell you a quick story. My 8-year-old niece comes over to me a few weeks later. She says, Uncle Barry, can we spell smile? S-M-I-E-L. I thought about it. Smile sounds the same. Why not? I asked her how come. She says, because then it would stand for seeing miracles in everyday life. Out of the mouth of an 8-year-old. What was she doing? She was creating the kind of world she wants to live in. CREATE is a fabulous acronym that stands for causing rethinking, enabling all to excel. That's really the greatest aspect of being human, the ability to look at things and rethink a position and shift your perspective. Now, shift is a wonderful word. I've been working with people for more than 42 years, and I can tell you 97.2% of all people I work with drop the F in shift, and the other stuff happens. So you're going to be effing careful with your Fs. And the genius of this is because once you understand how you can shift your perspective, it's just a slight shift in perspective, you can now internalize the 6 most important words you ever hear and learn. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. So let's choose to use the 2 most powerful words in the English language 3 times a day from now and the rest of your life. And you do this, you'll be happier, healthier, and wealthier. So will your family, your friends, and all living beings. And these 2 words, of course, are thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks stands for to harmonize and nurture kindness. To harmonize and nurture kindness. The Dalai Lama is quoted as saying, be kind whenever possible. As he says, always possible. So imagine you go into your coffee shop and you order a fancy latte, you sit down, somebody brings it to you, say thank you. You go to the coffee shop and you order a fancy latte, a few minutes go by, nobody brings it to you. You go to the counter and say, I'm sorry, we forgot, we'll bring it. You sit down, a couple more minutes goes by, somebody brings it, you still say thank you. You're walking out of the coffee shop, it's raining out, and somebody holds the door open for you. You say, thank you. You're walking out of the coffee shop, it's raining out, and somebody slams the door on you. You say, thank you. You're late for an appointment, you're stuck in traffic, somebody cut you off. You say, thank you. You get to the middle of the night, and you stub your toe, and it hurts. You say, thank you. To harmonize and nurture kindness. Kind is a fabulous word that stands for keep inspiring noble deeds. I can't think of anybody that inspires noble deeds, inspires me, noble deeds, and talking about money and economy and life than our dear friend, Peter Nolan. Peter, please say hello now to 352,819 people around the world.
How are you? Good to see you, Barry. Good to see everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. As I said in the introduction, Peter is the most requested guest that I've ever had on the podcast. And I've had some, thank God, some major people. And the 2 main reasons are, number 1, because he's straight shooter. And number 2, he knows what he's talking about. The briefest of backgrounds about Peter, I've mentioned many times before, and you'll find all of this, by the way, in the notes, the show notes. Just go to barryshore.com, BARRYSHORE, barryshore.com. Everything you want to know about Peter is going to be there, and the show will be there so you can listen again, share it with 5 friends so we can touch 1.5 million people, and just get into what we're about to discuss today, because Peter's background is quite remarkable. He started out at a very small college in northern New York. He was able to transfer in his sophomore year to a prestigious college called Cornell, where he did very well. But when he graduated, it was a difficult time. He might even talk about that in the business world. And yet he did well and continued to do well because of mindset. I'm saying this about Peter, mindset. He used his ability to understand that if he worked hard and was diligent, good things will happen, because that's the nature of life. It's called the law of attraction. Came to California, got involved with a remarkable company called Leonard Green, which now I think touches $50 billion in equity fund management. And then Peter went off, and he's still involved with them, but he went off on his own, and through his family foundation, he is a businessman who owns, along with his partners, businesses. So he's talking about running functional businesses. He's not an economist. He's not studying the economy. He's living it. So with that as an introduction, Peter, I'm going to say two things. One of them is, first of all, thank you for being here. And number two is that we are so au courant. Now, we're pre-recording. This show is going to be sent out to the world on July 4th, which will be great because it's the celebration of the greatest country in human history. But we're also so au courant because just yesterday, the President of the United States, Mr. Joe Biden, announced his great program called Bidenomics. And he said he's out there to convince people that what you're actually seeing is not true. I'm saying those words. That what this really is a great economy, you just need to appreciate it. I'm going to show you how to appreciate it. Now, of course, he's gotten some flack, and we call it Bidenflation is really the world. But I want to just throw this right to you, Peter. Again, you're the owner of businesses, and we know that things are tough right now. What do you think of when you hear the President of the United States touting his economic policies?
Well, I think, thanks, Barry, first for having me. But when I hear the politicians that talk about the success of their policies, it really doesn't square with what we're seeing out there in the economy. And so there's a clear disconnect. And I guess you do things like coin a phrase for your economic plan to convince relatively uninformed voters of what's going on. But, I think the economy, look, I've been very negative. I've been very negative for.
Oh, say it again, Peter.
Yeah, I've been fairly negative on the economy for some time now, Barry, and I've been, wrong. I thought the economy was going to be worse than what we're seeing. I thought that the moves by the Federal Reserve and the spike in interest rates would have a greater impact on the market than we're seeing, and so it's so far the U.S. economy has weathered everything that's been thrown at it better than I anticipated. But the economy is certainly, it's not robust. There's interest rates are having a significant impact. Hasn't really impacted employment yet, but it seems to be coming. I mean, you see company after company having significant layoffs. But still, it's not that easy to hire people. So it's sort of I guess I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. Unemployment is low. Interest rate, people are getting laid off, and it's difficult to hire people. It doesn't quite make sense. I continue to think that this interest rate rise and even just yesterday, the Fed telegraphed that there could be more interest rate increases coming in the next several months. I think that interest rate rise has still not felt its way fully through the economy, and when it does, I think it'll be difficult. I'd say we're not in a, everyone debates what's a recession when real GNP or GDP growth declines. But I would say we're not quite in a recession right now, but I still feel there's a good probability we could be in the next, call it 6 months.
So let's take a look at a few things that you said, because I say this with respect, of course, and a smile on my face. Number one, again, one of the reasons that I love speaking with you and working with you and other people also is you use three words that no politician would ever say, even though, as you said, you were speaking out of both sides of your mouth, so you were the classic politician. But you said, I was wrong. In other words, we have the recordings, and it's true. 6 months ago, we were talking about the R word, and that it's almost inevitable, and yet the stock market, in terms of being robust, is defying anything. Now, you cannot defy reality forever, but at the moment it is. And if you just take a look at data, I'm going to throw a couple of things, because again, I always bone up before we meet. And the first 15 months, or the 15 months, yes, of President Biden's presidency, his administration, the economy grew by a robust 1%. It was actually 0.9% for the first 12 months, and a little over 1+ in the past 3 months that we have data for. So just over 1%. To put that in perspective, that is less than the economy growth, less than Canada, less than India, less than China. So we are the biggest industrialized nation in the world, and therefore that's one of the reasons why we still have a stock market that's functional and growing up. But our growth, our rate of growth, is anemic at best. That's number one. Number two, real wages for working people have not kept up with inflation. Now, inflation by the government is approximately 5.3 or 5.4%. But if you walk into any store and you buy something on a regular basis, you know that inflation is somewhere between 7 and 8%. So these
I do think it's, and we're seeing this in sort of businesses that we have. I do think that, for example, food costs are not rising, and in some instances they're now declining in certain categories. A fun fact, and there was an article in the Wall Street Journal to this effect, is that today the herd of beef cattle in the United States is the same size that it was in 1960. And why is that? Well, you've had drought conditions, not this year, but in the last couple of years in the western states. But you also had drought conditions in the Midwest. And what ranchers will do is that if there's poor grass, they'll sell off their cattle. Because if you have, and I know a little bit about this, if you have cattle, it's very, very difficult to justify growing feed to feed them. Most cattle they graze, particularly in the Midwest and in the West. So they just graze on the grasslands that happen to be there. If you actually have to go buy hay or buy feed to feed your cattle, everyone talks about grass-fed beef, right? Most beef is grass-fed until about 6 months before they're slaughtered. Because most cattle just graze on the open land, and so anyways, what happened is ranchers shrank their herds as a result of the drought. So as a result of that, if you look at the value of cattle today, it's up about 76%. So if you go to your store, your beef prices are going to be very high. They're going to be high for a while, I suspect. But if you look at other commodities, we are seeing the other commodities start to decline. And you just have to imagine that given what's going on with interest rates and everything else in the economy, and as you pointed out, real wages, people are scaling back, they're trading down, those sorts of things. Because what's happened is that we have seen a decline in what you would call real wages. That your dollar, it doesn't matter how many dollars you have, it matters what you can buy with those dollars. And
right.
As a result of inflation, you can buy less. And that's why people are pretty cranky about the economy right now.
So let's talk about inflation now. And again, I heard a wag mention after Mr. Biden announced Bidenomics or Bidenomics, whatever they're calling it. He said they should really call it Bidenflation because that's what it is. And right. You mentioned that there's a double whammy. There is inflation. Whatever the number is, inflation by definition decreases the value of your money, no matter who you are. that's just a law. It decreases every year. And even if it's only 5.6%, well, in 12 years, prices double. They have to. It's just the nature of arithmetic. By the same token, as you mentioned, Mr. Powell says we will be raising interest rates. He spoke in Europe, not here. He spoke in Europe, and he mentioned that he sees somewhere between 1 and 2 times he's going to be raising interest rates in the coming months, in the 6 months. So that the damper upon us is bringing out what I call the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And we know the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse in the biblical sense are death, famine, war, and conquest. Now, interestingly enough, there is a war in the world. Thank God there is no famine, especially in the United States of America. And as you pointed out, thank God even some food commodities like eggs were skyrocketing. Eggs, thank God, have come down a tremendous amount. And I believe that it's not just because of production, but I believe because people understood that if you make it so that people can't have that which they want every single day at a reasonable price, there is great unrest. I mean, we're talking about real unrest in the world. And eggs are such an important commodity in everything that's made.
But Barry, you're it sounds like there's a central planner that does that. And that's not the case, right? That's the central planner is the market.
Yes.
If the markets are allowed to function, that's what they do. So, like, for example, the price of eggs has gone up. We happen to own a farm supply business, and at the farm supply business, they sell chicks, baby chicks, and they sell all the stuff you need to raise chickens. And so we've seen an explosion in demand for baby chicks and chicken feed and all the associated products to raise chicken. So that the market speaks. The price of eggs go up, and people say, "Well, maybe I can grow my own." Now, I don't think you can grow your own cheaper than a farmer, a sophisticated farmer can, but still, people will say, "Well, I'm just going to raise my own eggs, so I don't have to pay the price at the grocery store." And it also gives them, look, it's fun, and you're kind of connecting with nature. So there's various reasons you do it. But just getting back to your point, there's no one that says, "Hey, we're going to have unrest unless the price, we control the price of eggs." And what will happen, and we've seen this at times. We see this in different economies around the world. It happened. I remember in my lifetime, it was a Republican president. President Nixon enacted wage and price controls.
Right.
And what you saw were critical shortages. That's when you had the gas lines. That's when you had, real issues, real supply issues. And so, I'm very wary of when a government, and you see this, and obviously around the world when governments decide, okay, I was reading an article about Australia where they put in, price controls on natural gas because people were complaining natural gas is too high. Well, what happens is that it will work in the short term, because the producers have no choice, but eventually they'll stop investing in new facilities and new exploration and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you wake up and you just have an acute shortage. So, I think that what's happening in the marketplace is people are trading down. I mean, go to a restaurant. I mean, it's extraordinarily expensive. If you go to McDonald's or someplace like that, it's not that bad. But even so, the restaurant prices are up significantly because all the inputs and labor.
Right. So I was going to ask you, take even the QSR world, quick service restaurant like McDonald's, they are so good at understanding the value of a penny, and yet they're getting touched and hurt. I'm saying these words, especially in a place like California, which you know very well because you own business in California. Where California begins to do what you just said. It's a state, it's a government, and beginning to try to mandate certain things that by definition hurt a certain industry, in this case, the QSR, the quick service restaurants. The legislature is about to enact, and I think they may actually have done this already, where unions will now control more of the process of wages, and therefore the pressures on an owner of something. And by the way, most of the franchise owners in California over the past 35 years were minority people.
Right. Immigrants.
And thank God did very well. People were buying 1, 2, 3 and became wealthy from it. And now it's shrinking because, again, as you just said, government gets involved and touches anything, in my humble opinion, things go the opposite way. So right now you have, I'm going to mention it because you're in the state of New York, but you're not in New York City. And now New York City wants to mandate certain things when it comes to the way pizza is made in certain places. We laugh at it, and yet this is that terrible invisible hand, but not the invisible hand of the market. It's the visible hand of the government.
Right. Well, the government, what's interesting, I was actually had dinner last night with a friend of mine who's a county legislator in New York State. And I said, I didn't know gas stoves were bad, if not for the last 8 months, right? Where did that come from? I mean,
yeah. Hey, Peter, where does that come from? Please tell me. I'd like to know.
I really haven't studied it, so I don't know. But certainly someone gets the idea. It's like, okay, we need to regulate this aspect of people's lives. And, I think that that's going on. It's people in power in the government have a very, very rabid beliefs about how things should happen. And one thing they've decided is, like with pizza, they decided that the only way you should be able to cook a pizza is with an electric heating device of some sort, right? You can't use gas, you can't use wood, you can't use coal. And so, a lot of your pizza makers, the whole pizza industry, probably 90+% of the pizzas are cooked on gas. But what they want to do is eliminate all that. What they want to do is they want to burn gas in the power plant to supply electricity to cook your pizza in the restaurant.
Right. I want everybody to understand what Peter's doing. He's laughing right now, or he's smiling, because he's saying if you looked at the reality of what the extremists want, it's almost against what they're doing, because they want to burn tremendous amounts of gas to create electricity so that you could only cook, let's say, pizza with electricity, but you're using far more gas than any number of pizza places would ever use.
Right.
Again, it's laughable, but it's that process of trying to control. And this is really what we're talking about, because you're in business. You own some pizza places.
I do.
In California.
Now,
do you have a challenge today that was unforeseen even 24 months ago?
Well, we haven't been hit with the gas thing yet. I guess that's to come. But I would say, look, we've had really acute labor shortages, a lot of mandated wage increases in cities. For example, we have a restaurant in West Hollywood, and West Hollywood has a minimum wage which is different than the state or city minimum wage of $19 an hour. And that sounds great. I hope we could pay people, $19, $20, $25 an hour, but you live in a competitive reality, and you can only afford to charge your customers so much in order to pay for the food, the raw materials, the rent, the insurance. And what we're seeing in California in particular is just a lot of hidden costs have exploded. Probably one of the bigger challenges has been litigation. You get these people that will send you a letter threatening to sue you over ADA compliance, which is, American with Disabilities Act compliance. Like, someone, and it's usually a lawyer gets someone to come in with a wheelchair, and they discover that we had one situation where the lid holder for sodas was too high. So, you reach up, you reach up to grab the lid, and they concluded that it was too high, and therefore they sued us under the American with Disabilities Act over the location of our lids. Now, if that person had, genuinely couldn't reach a lid, and they just asked any one of our associates to go get a lid for them, of course they would have, but that's a basis for threatening a lawsuit. And what you do as a business owner is you settle. You move the lid container lower, I guess, but you also have to settle with the person's lawyer, not the person who brought the suit. And that's been a real challenge.
Okay, I'm going to put you on pause here for a moment. I'm going to use a word, and then we'll come back and talk about it more. And I call that extortion. Now, you don't have to agree, but I just called that extortion. And I happen to know something about the ADA because I am one, right? Everybody knows.
I forget.
Very sure. Thank God, because of the ADA, I have, when my assistant wheels me in the wheelchair, every curb has a ramp. Well, I'm glad that it exists. But this, to me, is so egregious. But we're going to just do a quick break because we have people that sponsor our show. They love us, and we urge you to love them and utilize their products and services. So we'll be back right after this brief message. Don't go away. There's more Peter Nolan coming, and we're going to talk about real stuff like he is. So be right back after this brief message. Imagine the kind of place you would want to shop for your favorite fur baby pet. HonestPets.co. Well, you found it. HonestPets.co. Not .com, .co. This is your go-to spot for the best, the cleanest pet treats that exist anywhere on the planet. All of the brands go through a rigorous review to make sure they meet the high standards of cleanliness, health benefits, and naturalness. This site was started by a husband and wife team, and it's veteran-owned, and that care about pets, especially dogs and cats, and coming soon, bird treats. These are very nice young people who really care about making a difference because a portion of proceeds go to support veteran organizations with a focus on service dogs. This is the place where you want to go. You want to tell your friends this has the finest, yummiest, freshest, all-natural treats and stuff for your fur baby. So go there, honestpets.co. honestpets.co. Do it now. Opportunity. What an opportunity. I'm going to use 2 4-letter words right now. Free gift. Free gift. Yes, you can have a copy of my best-selling book, The Joy of Living, How to Slay Stress and Be Happy, the ebook version for absolutely free. All you have to do is send an email to me, Barry, Barry, at barryshore.com. And in the heading, the subject line, just write free gift. It's as easy as that. This is a life-changing, life-enhancing opportunity. Barry at barryshore.com. You'll be glad you did. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Free gift. Do it now. Take the action. Make it happen right now. Best wishes. Bye. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Remember, you're good-looking because you're always looking for and finding the good. We found good in abundance. His name is Peter Nolan. He's talking about life, money, and about you because you want to be happier, healthier, and wealthier. So welcome back, Peter. Thank you for being here with us. We left off on a very high note called the most litigious society in the history of the world, I believe. Maybe not, but I'm making that statement for the moment because it is.
I don't think you're wrong. we live in the most litigious society in the history of the world. I mean, I can't imagine where else there was greater use of litigation in courts to get what you want.
Actually, I agree with you wholeheartedly because I said the words. And yet the story you just mentioned about somebody coming in, and let's even say that it was, in quotation marks, a setup. In other words, this nice person in a wheelchair didn't happen to come in and couldn't reach and didn't ask any of the associates to help, and then went to a lawyer and say, as opposed to a potential, we don't know if it's true.
Well, for example, just to clarify that, we've had situations where they claim someone came into a restaurant in a wheelchair, and we actually took out the film, because we have cameras in the restaurants, and no one even attempted to come into the restaurant in a wheelchair that day. So that, they allege something happened on a particular day, and in fact, there's no evidence that anyone came there, and we show that to the attorney, and they, I guess the time. I mean, again, we get a couple of these a month.
Oh my gosh!
It's a real issue. You asked me what are issues, and California is a very, very litigious state. Our restaurants are in California, and it's really, it's really exploded. You get people sue you over ADA compliance with your website, right?
No, you said right. No, what does that mean? How does that
No,
happen?
you may have that exposure, Barry. For example, you have a website. Is it ADA compliant? Or what if I'm blind, for example? What do you have on your website that would enable me to access whatever you have on your website? And so
I don't want to admit right now, because if somebody, this is being recorded, I'm not going to say a word.
anyways, so that's a day in the life. I mean, there's constant. In California, it is epidemic.
Okay, so this is another E word. I use the word extortion. You're saying the word epidemic. And let's be blunt, California is how should we say, in quotation marks, a model for a number of left-leaning states, governorships, et cetera, in distinction from Florida, Texas, et cetera. Maybe even New York, by the way. New York may be that which follows right after California. Like you just said, you didn't know that gas was a problem. A gas stove was a problem a few months ago. And all of a sudden, oh my gosh, the world is about to fall because we have gas stove. Gas is one of the greatest benefits to humanity because it is so relatively inexpensive and burns clean. It's much better than a coal mine and a coal plant.
Right.
And by the way, the other thing is I mentioned earlier the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Well, there are also four horsemen of the economic apocalypse, and they are inflation, deflation, confiscation, and catastrophe. Catastrophe means a world war, which happened. God, we don't want ever to think about that, but who knows, because of the craziness that is being aligned right now between China and Russia getting together, and with Iran thrown into the mix and a little sprinkle of North Korea, that's an alignment we don't like. It shouldn't be. And the thing that's happening in Ukraine is not a thing, it's a real war. But inflation and deflation, inflation we have, deflation is when you may have that R word, that recession issue. And when they happen in tandem, you can have real problems in the economy. And I want to mention something to you specifically that, again, this is potentially national, and I think it's going to be the tip of the spear will be California. There is now before the Supreme Court, and it's being pushed by some remarkably not left-leaning. They are the avowed communist senators like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders to create a wealth tax. Now, everybody knows that in the United States of America, we have an income tax. It happens to be a progressive one, and it affects people who make more money, more so than less money. A lot of people, 48 or 49% of people who earn income don't pay any tax. But there's now something that is being floated called the wealth tax. And that it's not what you earn in income, it's what is potentially an unrealized gain in your portfolio. The Wall Street Journal is talking about it. I'm following it. You're a target, Peter Nolan. Let's be blunt. I want some thoughts on it. And what do you see as the potential of it ever happening?
Well, it could happen at the federal level. It could happen at the state level, right? California has toyed with the idea of a wealth tax, right? And wealth tax is not only a tax on unrealized gains, but it could be just a tax on whatever you happen to have. So if you have a farm or a house or whatever it is you happen to own, you somehow have to figure out what the value of that is and pay it in as a tax. They've been spectacular failures to raise money in other countries. I know France had a wealth tax at one point, but almost any real country that's had a real wealth tax has abandoned it because people. The thing is that if California, for example, has had and Barry, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a net out-migration in the last 24 months of about 500,000 people.
Yes.
Now, and by the way, one thing I don't understand is 500,000 people left my state, but we still have a housing crisis. That's a whole different.
We'll talk about that.
I honestly don't understand. I just
right.
Explain. 500,000 people left. Why isn't there 500,000 empty structures somewhere? But what's happened, is in California, you've had a lot of issues that have driven people out of the state. And certainly we have the highest income tax in the country in the state of California. And so, if you layer on a wealth tax, that out-migration will only accelerate. And that's what happens in countries, right? A lot of people left France when they initiated the wealth tax, and they went to Monaco or they went to Switzerland. They went to a lot of different places. And so, it's really when they say that a really rich guy only pays 3% tax. The truth is that they're basically taking the tax that they paid and dividing it by their wealth. It's not their income. People pay significantly, and you only have to look, and I don't happen to have the statistics in front of me, but it's sort of like, a very, very small percentage of the people pay the vast bulk of the taxes, both on the state and the federal level. And so, if you want to basically chase away your producers, put in an additional tax, put in a wealth tax, and people will leave or they'll stop producing.
Oh, so let's discuss this, because this is a point that I think you're making that is so important. And we have, thank God, listeners around the world. The bulk of our listeners are outside the United States. Everybody wants to come to the United States because this is a country built on opportunity. It's the O word. If there is any place in the world that is known for opportunity, it's the United States of America. Agreed? There's not a question. I just realized the word agreed is why some people come here. They emphasize the greed part, not the agreed. But my point is that everybody understands that America is built on opportunity. And the more that the opportunity becomes lessened and squeezed and hurt, well, not only do you not have people longing to come here, you don't get the best and the brightest. And the point that you made about, let's say, 500,000 people leaving California, it wasn't just a number, 500,000. They were mostly people who were producers. They were people who owned businesses or had a significant place in many businesses. They were capable of moving and starting another business, of doing something. They weren't just migrating away. They were people who were active in the economy. And that is really the critical issue. When you have, let's say, like the Elon Musks of the world, okay, it doesn't matter because the wealth is so great where he moves, but he physically moved, and he's thinking about, as he stated, moving Twitter headquarters and other places. And people are actually sometimes scratching their head and say, well, wait, why should I stay here if all I'm doing is being beat up? So let's just talk in the few minutes we have remaining about this really powerful mindset that is the United States of America. Because I want to talk, we talked about California and how that's I'll call it, for want of a better term, a negative mindset. In other words, what can the state do to regulate, to use its power as a state to do things, whether they decide they have a bug up their butt, oh, we're going after gas, or whatever the particular issue is. And in California, there is a super majority in the legislature. So there's no issue about getting things passed. A small thing, then I'll ask you the question again. There was a measure to build desalination plants along the Pacific coast, which would help greatly because one of the major issues of the world, but especially in the Southwest right now, is water. There's just no question. Water is the most essential element in the world. I think you'd agree to that. Mm-hmm. I think you even have a business involved with water because it's fundamental. And yet the desalination plants, which California could afford, were summarily dismissed by a board of only 7 people, by the way. 6 voted against it, 1 voted for it, because it wasn't environmentally perfect. You hear this? Not so good, not environmentally perfect. But let's move away from California and tell me what you think, because you're a good, outgoing, smart, pleasant guy. You speak to a lot of people all over the country. What do you hear from other business people throughout the country?
About what?
About opportunity in the United States. Is there in any way a drawing in of horns and saying, I think I'm going to be much more cautious today than I've ever been?
Well, I think, yeah, I do. I think in a lot of different categories, there's still a lot of pain to be extracted. In real estate, for example, talking to people in commercial real estate, there's a lot of factors affecting that business. Number one factor, in my opinion, is interest rates. But for offices, people, a lot of central city offices are have relatively low occupancy. So you have low occupancy, you have high interest rates, higher. We don't really have high interest rates yet. You just have higher interest rates. It can go higher even. And a lot of people had variable debt. And so, as far as new development, as far as what's going on in urban areas, people are very cautious. And I would say the same thing is true in general. Just where people are not spending as much on growth. They're watching things more carefully. We've had the consumer has suffered from inflation, but so have businesses. You have all your raw materials that you buy, whether you're running a restaurant, or whether you're manufacturing something. All your input costs have gone up, and a lot of times the price you pass on to the customer doesn't keep up with that inflation. So you get squeezed. I think I think a lot of people in the political and academic world think that uh, business is easy. That that everyone has a magic monopoly. Anybody that has a business has a magic monopoly to make money, and it exploits the worker or it exploits the customer. And the truth is just the opposite. No
Right.
matter, there are certain businesses that have meaningful advantages, but monopolies just don't last. And most business, 98% of businesses, it's a knife fight. Every day you wake up and your competitors are after you, and you have litigation, and you have cost increases, and you may have labor issues. You just have a whole host of issues, that challenges that you have to address, and it is not easy. I think that's one of the things that I've learned after doing this now for over 40 years is just, I have a profound respect for anyone that has built and that can run a business. And it's not to diminish what the employee does or all the other people at a company do, because it truly takes everyone to make these companies work. But it is just so darn hard out there, and it always has been, you know.
I think that's the point. But again, on an upbeat note, you mentioned pain. That's the P word. I'd like to talk about still on the O word, which is opportunity. One never knows. Matter of fact, I have a good friend who I respect tremendously who said one of the reasons you see the stock market doing as well as it is right now is built on a hope. And that hope is called ChatGPT and AI. It's being driven by this phenomenon that people think it's going to work, it's going to happen. And when the real numbers keep coming in and interest rates continue to increase, inflation probably will, and wages continue to be depressed and things happening, I think you're right. There's a lot of pain.
But you're right. Look, if you look at it over the course of my career, we had the .com, we had robotics, we had the .com boom, we had the internet boom. Now we have the artificial intelligence and ChatGPT hope and boom. And usually the market's right. Usually when the market says they're going to be wrong, there's going to be certain instances where the market's going to be very wrong. But in general, the market's probably right that we're about to enter remember when the internet, you and I are old enough to remember when the internet started, and we're all trying to figure out how this is going to work and whether we're going to ever use it. And now look at us, we're talking over the internet. And so I think with artificial intelligence, what the market has decided is it's real, it's here, it's going to have a profound impact. But what's going to happen is there are going to be winners and losers. There's going to be certain companies that are playing in that end of the market that will not be successful. And then there's going to be other companies that are going to be tremendously successful. They could be the next Apple, the next Amazon, the next Microsoft. And there are companies we've not even heard of yet. And that there's a real probability that'll happen. And one of the great things about this country is there's no place better in the world to try to make that happen.
That's the note we want to complete this series with. And God willing, you'll come back. Well, I asked you 2 questions. I do it every time. Right. I know the answers already, but I'm going to do it anyway. So those people who've never heard Peter Nolan speak before. First question is, wonderful Peter, will you come back again?
Barry, I'll come back if you ask me.
I'm asking. Okay. And before the end of the year, so we'll figure out what happens. We'll do a special show just on that. And the next question is, you have only 80 seconds to answer this. What is your most fervent desire?
Well, it's the happiness and health of my family, but I am very concerned about what's going on in the world. So I guess my desire is for world peace. That's That's a pretty,
That's a big one, Peter. And you're going to.
I know. I mean, look what was happening in Russia just a week ago. Again, it seems that summer's a time when crazy things happen. But I do worry as we become more and more interconnected. There's really no place to hide, and that's a big change that's taking place over our lifetime. If you look at when I was in high school, we were connected, and you did have threat of nuclear war, but now we're really connected. The world has become, the community has shrunk so much as a result of this technology.
And this is only, I'll say it in a wonderful way, we'll call this low-level technology today compared to what will be in your grandchildren's, my grandchildren's lifetime, because they'll be AI natives. And again, on that wonderful note of artificial intelligence, I'm glad that we have not artificial intelligence, but real intelligence from Peter Nolan and your humble host, Barry Shore, and the Joy of Living podcast, where we discuss the three fundamentals of life. Life has purpose. You lead a purpose-driven life. You go mad. You make a difference in the world. And number 3 is to unlock the power and the secrets of everyday words and terms so you can be happier, healthier, and wealthier by listening to what Peter has to say and being aware of opportunity. What a wonderful world. And it really is. What a wonderful world. Smile, seeing miracles in life every day, seeing miracles in everyday life, as my 8-year-old niece says, and go out and create the kind of world you want to live in, causing rethinking, enabling all to excel. Use the 2 most powerful words in the English language 3 times a day, every single day for now and the rest of your life. They are thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks stands for to harmonize and nurture kindness. Peter wants world peace. It's incumbent upon each one of us to harmonize and nurture kindness. So on that wonderful note, we're going to do 2 things, a hug from Peter and Barry and a blessing. Our hug stands for heartfelt, unlimited giving. 1, 2, 3. And our blessing, go forth. Live exuberantly. Spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. Go mad. Go make a difference. Peter, don't go away. Okay? Let me do this.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joy of Living podcast. Now that's another step towards your healthier, happier, and wealthier life. Never hesitate to do good in the world, no matter what the situation. Join us for another upbeat discussion next time at barryshore.com. And be sure to leave a rating and subscribe to the show to get more conversations like this. And remember to share it with your family and friends too. See you on the next episode.